There is a place in the United States that did not become famous because of its landscape. It became famous because of what that landscape did to one person. In 1884, Theodore Roosevelt's wife and his mother died on the same day. He left New York almost immediately and traveled west into the Dakota Territory, looking for something that did not exist in the life he had known. What he found instead was a landscape that reshaped him. Today, that place is known as Theodore Roosevelt National Park. Most visitors see it as a quiet, lesser-known park of grasslands, badlands, and open sky. But that version misses the central fact: this is not a park with history. It is a landscape that changed the course of American conservation because it changed the person who would later define it. The landscape that doesn't announce itself. At first glance, Theodore Roosevelt National Park does not appear dramatic. There are no towering granite cliffs like Yosemite, no massive canyon systems like the Grand Canyon. The terrain is made up of rolling badlands, layered sediment, and wide grasslands broken by eroded formations. Unlike the more famous parks, this landscape does not overwhelm you immediately. It reveals itself slowly. Its scale is horizontal rather than vertical, spread across open space instead of concentrated into a single dramatic feature. This is not a place that forces attention. It requires it. The Badlands are the result of millions of years of erosion. Ancient rivers deposited layers of sediment, which were later exposed and carved by wind and water. The result is a landscape that is constantly changing. Slopes collapse, ridges shift. Colors vary depending on mineral content, creating bands of red, gray, and yellow across the terrain. The transformation. Exposure stripping away protection. When Theodore Roosevelt arrived in the Dakota Territory, he was not looking for a park. There was no park. There was only land, largely unsettled, shaped by cattle ranching and harsh environmental conditions. He invested in ranching and began spending extended periods in the region. His time here was not recreational. It was physical, demanding, and often isolating. He hunted, rode long distances, and lived through winters that were far more severe than anything he had experienced in the East. This environment stripped away the structure of his previous life. There were no political systems to navigate, no social expectations to maintain, and no controlled environment to rely on. What remained was exposure to weather, to distance, and to the limits imposed by the land itself. The Badlands are not forgiving. Summers bring intense heat, with little shade and long stretches of dry terrain. Winters bring extreme cold, with temperatures dropping well below freezing, heavy snowfall, and limited shelter. Water sources can be unreliable, and the terrain itself broken, uneven, and constantly shifting makes movement difficult. This is where the transformation began, not through observation, through endurance. The winter of 1886, 87, and the realization. During his time in the Dakota Territory, Roosevelt experienced these conditions directly. His ranching operations faced repeated challenges, culminating in the devastating winter of 1886-87, when severe conditions wiped out large numbers of cattle across the region. The financial loss was significant, but the lesson extended beyond economics. This was not a romantic wilderness. It was a system that imposed limits without mercy. And it was within those limits that Roosevelt began to develop a new understanding of the relationship between people and the land. He observed how quickly conditions could change and how fragile even abundant systems could become when pushed too far. Resources that seemed plentiful could disappear under pressure. Land that appeared stable could degrade when overused. He saw what happened when there were no constraints. Wildlife was present in large numbers, but it was also being hunted without regulation. Land was being used without long-term planning, often with immediate gain prioritized over sustainability. The absence of structure did not create balance. It created instability. From observation to philosophy, Roosevelt did not arrive with a defined conservation philosophy. That idea formed here, gradually, through direct experience rather than theory. The Dakota Badlands presented both abundance and vulnerability at the same time. It allowed no illusions and imposed consequences without exception. The conversion into presidency, 230 million acres. Theodore Roosevelt National Park was not established during Roosevelt's lifetime. It was created in stages, eventually becoming a national park in 1978. By then, Roosevelt had
Pushing
already
north
served as president
offers more
and had
opportunities to
permanently
probe
altered
the
trajectory
Dakota
of American
Badlands.
conservation.
There is much
During
to
his
dazzle
presidency,
the eye here.
he protected over 230 million
The
acres
panorama
of
of
public land.
Painted Canyon.
He
To rise up in the
established
American
national
societal
forests,
ranks,
wildlife
and his efforts
refuges,
paid off,
and
landing him
5
in the
national
highest office
parks.
in the nation, the
He
United
signed the
States
Antiquities Act
presidency.
into law,
Teddy
allowing
was
presidents to
influential in many
designate
ways as
national
president,
monuments
but one of his
without
most prominent
congressional
passions
approval.
was the conservation of
But the
important areas
ideas
across the
behind
nation,
those
and he
actions
fought to protect
did not
several of these
originate in
places for,
Washington.
as the legislation
They
that established
originated here.
Yellowstone
The
National Park
policies that
said, the
protected
benefit and
continent's
enjoyment of the
resources
people.
were shaped by direct experience in the Dakota Badlands. This park is not the result of his presidency. It is the foundation of it, the fragmented geography and the visitor experience. The park is divided into 3 units, the North Unit, the South Unit, and the Elkhorn Ranch Unit. These sections are separated by distance, reinforcing the fragmented nature of the landscape. There is no
National
single
park
road
named
connecting
for a
all parts
president,
of the park
or for that
directly.
matter, any person.
Visitors experience it in sections.
It is uniquely
not as a
Theodore
continuous
Roosevelt
space.
among all
This
parks in the
structure
system.
reflects the original geography of the area. The Badlands are not
In his
uniform.
lifetime,
They are
however,
broken
he was
into
often referred to
distinct
simply
regions,
as
each with its own
TR.
terrain and characteristics.
This Badlands
Most
landscape
visitors stay
had
within
a
the
deep
developed sections
and
of the
lasting
park.
influence on his life.
Scenic drives, short trails, and
From a
designated
family line of
viewpoints
early Dutch
provide
settlers in
access
New
to the
York,
landscape
TR had
without
a pampered
requiring
upbringing.
extensive time or effort.
He had been sickly, weak, and
Roosevelt
nearsighted,
exists,
but
in
he was
part,
full of pluck.
because of this place.
In
The
1884,
policies
when
he
Theodore was
implemented,
25,
the land he
both his wife
protected,
and his mother
and the
died
system of
on the
conservation
very
that
same
continues
day.
today were shaped
TR
by his time
was shattered.
in the Dakota Territory.
He came out
This
west to
landscape
these
did
North
not
Dakota
simply
Badlands,
influence him.
seeking time
It
to heal.
redefined how he understood
Retiring
the role
from
of
public
government
life,
in
he settled at the
protecting natural
Maltese Cross
resources.
Ranch, which he'd invested in.
Most visitors will
Now
see
he
the
would throw
surface,
himself into the vigorous
Badlands,
job of cattle
the
ranching.
grasslands.
With his
the
squeaky
wild.
voice and
What they
Eastern
may not
manners,
see
his
is the
ranch hands
connection
laughed
between
at him
this place
at
and the
first.
broader system of
To
protected
them, he was
land
the
that exists
four-eyed
today.
dude.
The park is not
But
just
Theodore
a preserved
Roosevelt
landscape.
soon won
It is
their
a
respect.
record of influence. An understanding
TR
that
fell in
changes
love with this
how
land.
the place is seen.
It became the source of his
because
tremendous
it is not
energy.
simply a park named after
When
a
he
president.
returned to public
It
life
is
to
the
become the
place that helped
26th
create
President of the United
This
States,
changed how you see
he did
Theodore
more for the
Roosevelt
National Park
the
system
guide linked
than
in the description
anyone
goes
before
further.
or since.
It's an alternative guide to the park built around everything this video couldn't cover. The Elkhorn
You can visit
Ranch
the
unit
site
where
of the
Roosevelt
Maltese
lived
Cross
while
Cabin,
ranching,
TR's
the
first
Badlands
ranch house in the
formation is carved
Badlands.
by constant erosion,
Teddy
the
will be at
conservation
home here,
philosophy that emerged from direct exposure to landscape fragility,
furnished in typical
and
fashion of the day.
the 230 million
A few of the
acres
items
protected
belong to him.
during his presidency. Just click the link below to get started.